which ends up kind of being a red flag as a leader
Mm.
because our goal eventually is to not have to do everything.
Hi, I'm Russ, and this is the Memory Makers Podcast, the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memories. Do Memory Makers, ad-libbed jingle today, gang. But I'm very excited to get right into it with you because I'm joined not by Danny Gruening, but his better half, Michelle Gruening. How are you, Michelle?
I am doing fantastic. So excited to be here with you, Russ.
We're so excited. We may not have Danny back if this goes well, just so you know.
I'm available.
Okay, that sounds good. I wanted to have you on because obviously you are a leadership coach at Action Lab Leadership, but you also have been running masterminds for a number of years, and you're the owner of MG Coaching as well, and you're just a switched on cat, and I love the way that your mind works. And so what I thought that we would do is for today's episode, talking a little bit about this growth from getting out of management and into leadership. What are some of the nuances and distinguishing pieces that we need to be aware of, whether it's ourselves or helping members on our team grow out of management roles and in addition to being a leader, so that way they can, understand how to best show up for their team. So getting into that, obviously, we touched a little bit on your background with coaching experience and the years that you've been doing that. But I also wanted to let folks know you got a background in managing and leading teams directly, as well as coaching folks through the high performance groups. And as I mentioned, you and Danny met back in the Disney days, so you've got some LBE industry experience as well, which we love. So give us a little bit 30,000 foot view of kind of how you got into coaching from your kind of corporate gig prior.
Yeah. So, like you said, I've had a leadership type role for kind of as long as I can remember. I have worked in the special events industry where I worked on the venue side of major special events like weddings and galas and rallies and meetings and all of those things. But then I also went into the software space where I led teams of customer success and technical support. And so I'm really passionate about excellent customer experience, an excellent client experience. And so when I kind of left my life in startup America, we'll say, I decided to continue doing what I'm naturally really good at and what I love doing, which is helping people get from where they are to where they want to go as a leader, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, or even someone who is working for someone else and loves their job, but just wants to elevate. And that's kind of why I got into coaching. And it's what I love so much about it.
I love it. I get fired up every time I have a conversation with you or Danny, just because one, there's so much to be gained with that kind of eternal curiosity, and you guys have that in spades. So let's get into this topic a bit of growing from management and kind of, hey, I'm doing the administrative functions of directing a team, and how then that starts to progress a bit into true leadership and those hierarchies and just the difference in relationships and encouragement and how those things have nuanced differences between them. And what I thought we could start with is, hey, like we talked about, there are nuanced differences. What are some of those kind of common misconceptions or false assumptions that people can fall into when they're seeking better ways to be a leader beyond just being a manager?
I love this question. And I want to start kind of exactly where you left off is a lot of people think that being a manager and being a leader are the same thing. And they're really not, because a manager is usually on a level of leadership called position, where people follow them because they have to, because of the title that you hold as a manager. Now, you really start moving into real leadership when you level up to a place called permission-based leadership. This is where people follow you because they want to. They might even follow you past your kind of existing stated responsibilities because they see you are investing in them as a person. So managing is really about getting work done, and leading is about elevating people for the long term.
I dig it. And there's a little bit of that John Maxwell 5 levels of leadership in there, which I think if you haven't looked at that diagram, like give that a Google. It is definitely worth checking out because it just helps you start to realize, okay, how do literally, if I'm trying to get to the next level, it's got levels of leadership in there for you to sink your teeth into. Knowing that there are those differences, then let's say I'm a first time, or I'm a manager. I've got that hustle. I'm getting after it. I'm, energetic with my team. I care about their needs, but I now have this new title and I'm in this bigger role and I feel like it comes with these responsibilities. What are some trappings that can kind of happen in a situation like that? If I'm newer to the game, where I'm trying to do all of these things, how do I make heads or tails of that and not lose kind of what that special sauce is of why I got there in the first place?
I think you kind of touched on it as trying to do all of the things. One of the traps that leaders really fall into is trying to do everything themselves and not delegating work to their teams because maybe they feel like their team isn't quite ready yet. Or a lot of times it's really interesting. Leaders will choose not to delegate work out to their teams because they're almost trying to protect them from some of the tougher, harder parts of the business, which ends up kind of being a red flag as a leader because our goal eventually is to not have to do everything. We want to build a team of leaders and problem solvers. And so something to look out for would be if you are a leader and you're really struggling to delegate out tasks to your direct reports or even to your management team that reports up to you. I would encourage you to pause and start with something that may be seemingly small. But if you're not delegating, it can kind of put you into this vicious cycle of disconnection from your team. You may become the bottleneck in getting work done because you're trying to hoard everything so close to the best. And you can also lose the bigger vision sometimes because you're so stuck in the day-to-day weeds that bigger vision of growth and scaling and elevating your teams gets lost because you're, I don't know, checking the time clock every day when another manager could be doing that.
Sure. No, that makes total sense. Well, and Danny and I joke where it's, hey, you can't have this superhero complex, right? Like you've been elevated, and with the owners we talk about this. Hey, there are times where you need to work on the business. There are times you need to work in the business, and leaders as a whole need to kind of remember that mindset. And I struggle with it myself where it's, gosh, I don't want to be a burden. Like I want them to be able to focus on what they want to do, and I can mama bird that stuff, more so than is beneficial for me or for them. And that's something that I still have to make sure that I'm kind of keeping a check on, as I continue to grow as a leader as well. What are some other, I think we've talked through, obviously the differences between managing and leading, struggling to delegate. What are some of those other kind of trappings that we can fall into if we're not careful?
Not knowing how to give impactful, critical feedback when your team needs it.
Yeah.
It kind of comes back into that complex we can kind of come into where we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or we don't want to be offensive to anybody. And of course, we don't want to do those things, but that's not the definition of critical feedback. The thing that I like to remember and I like to remind people of is you're only giving critical feedback to people who you are investing in. You're investing your time and your energy and your effort to give them critical feedback because you can see their potential and because you care about their path on leadership or in their career. Because typically, if we don't really care, or maybe it's someone who isn't long for the company, you're probably not going to invest a lot of time in helping to elevate them. So, but
Right.
Critical feedback is so key because a lot of times we can focus so much on the feedback that we kind of lose a little bit of our caring side. And I would encourage people, if you haven't read the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott, it is a solid one. And this one really opened my eyes up to my communication style back in a previous life when I was leading those teams at the software company, because the Radical Candor is kind of all about these 4 quadrants of manipulative insincerity, ruinous empathy, obnoxious aggression, and radical candor. And it's all about providing feedback where you're caring deeply, but you're challenging directly. And this book was eye-opening for me because I found myself falling more in obnoxious aggression. I'm a pretty
Really?
direct person. Yeah, I'm a pretty direct person, but I learned that I was coming off a bit too uh maybe blunt, we'll go with.
Okay.
And people were losing the empathy that was behind it. It was being a little hidden. So if you're struggling with giving critical feedback, maybe a really good place to start is, how are you actually relaying the message? And is the message you want to send actually getting across? Or is it
Yeah.
getting lost in tone, or I don't know, a different type
Yeah.
of intention? So that's
Yeah.
a really good one to check out.
Well, and the book is fantastic. The audiobook I've done several times. Just it's one of those that I like to keep in kind of a once a year, once every 2 year rotation because it's always good to go back on. And Kim Scott does, it's not a TED talk, but she does like there's like a good 15-minute clip that really helps you identify some of those different quadrants. But the book is just littered with, hey, this is, to your point, bringing the empathy up front and first explaining, hey, this is why I'm bringing this up, because it's coming from a place that like I want you to succeed. I don't want you to have these problems in the future, and I know that you don't want to get stuck in that kind of a rut. And so it was a game changer for me because, you know, coming from a large family and being one of the younger siblings where you're just trying to keep your head down and keep everybody happy, like that was it was like seeing the Matrix for the first time when I went and did that
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
So you also talk about personal growth when it comes to leadership. Tell me a little bit more about that.
And you all have heard Danny talk about this, I'm sure, lots of times, but personal development is such a key part to elevating your level of leadership, because there is this, we're all John Maxwell fans here, and he has a law called the law of the lid, where essentially you will only grow a business or a team as far as you grow yourself. And so if as a leader, you're a level 5 out of 10, if you're a level 5 leader, your team, your business, your goals will never grow past a level 5, because that's where you have capped yourself out. So it's all about raising that lid. And a lot of that comes through personal development.
Mm.
And no, it's not fluffy nonsense. It's about understanding your mindset. It's about expanding your capacity to lead other people. It's about elevating your influence consistently and always learning and growing. I am
Mm.
very much an advocate of the saying that if you think that you have arrived at all knowing, you probably have a lot more to learn than you think you do.
Yeah.
So we should always be growing and learning, no matter if you're the owner, the first time manager, the CEO, the whatever. All of us have something to continue to learn and grow and constantly expand, because that allows us to keep bringing people up alongside
Yeah.
us.
Well, and it's anecdotally, and there are studies upon studies and studies, but you know, I can't make an episode without some anecdotal bro science thrown in here. But just every switched on high achieving leader that really has the pulse and the empathy behind their team, I have yet to meet one who is not like, hey, you know, they always have either a book or a podcast recommendation, something that they've come across, an article that they've read. They are constantly inputting back into the machine, and it's just one of those things where I really found. And I'm sure that there's one out there, because there will be for every rule, there's an exception kind of a thing. But I've yet to meet somebody who I'm like, that person has it going on, and holy cow, is their team on point, that is not a consummate just consumer of input and knowledge and new tactics and all of that. So I couldn't agree more with you on that. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit, because I really love to have some tangible takeaways or frameworks that folks can use when we discuss issues like this. And so what I'd love to do, you and I were talking a little bit yesterday in kind of prep for the episode on the 1-3-1 rule as something that could be really beneficial for folks. So give us a little bit of a rundown on what that is.
So the 1-3-1 rule is by a guy named Dan Martell, and this whole concept really flows into that goal of delegating and creating a team of problem solvers. So the 1-3-1, the first one is identify the one problem that you are trying to solve. because oftentimes a problem defined is already halfway there to being
Mm,
solved when you really know what it is.
yeah.
The three is three possible solutions to solving that problem. The final one is the one solution that is the best to start with. And the best thing is if that one solution doesn't work as you expected, you already have two lined up. So this is really great for leaders to start to embrace on their own and understanding how to apply the 131 in the way that they approach problems. But this is so key to also really empowering your team of managers or, assistant leaders or whatever the titles are in your business to help create them as problem solvers. Because if you can teach this 131 of identify the one problem, what are three possible solutions that you've already thought of, and which one are you going to start with? That is going to allow your team to not only take responsibility of being part of the solution, but it's going to let them take a bit more ownership over their work. And they're not going to come to you to solve the problem. They're going to come to you maybe for a bit of guidance on the one solution that they want to start with. But
Mm,
it's all about kind of greasing those wheels and getting it moving a lot faster towards a solution.
I love it. I've got to insert a quick plug for the previous week's episode that we recorded and that came out just before this one, where I was talking about just getting unstuck with stuff and how do you start to evaluate a problem and how do you go through all of that. And so this would tie in perfectly with that, especially with, as you mentioned, identifying the problem, really important, experimenting and doing some creative thought processing on what are potential solutions, knowing that we're going to have to tinker and experiment depending on the complexity of the issue. And then I love to take it to your point of, okay, now what's the one that we're going to prioritize and execute on with the best chances, or what we think is going to best address that issue? Because that is such a common pain point for people is, gosh, I would much rather help coach you if I know that you've put in a little bit of effort and are saying, hey, this is what I'm looking at. What am I missing? What should I be looking at when it comes to some of these things, instead of just coming with the problem? You're, training your team then, especially through this 131 approach of, hey, this is how I want you to tackle this for me. You're inherently and objectively coaching them and giving them the formula of how you want them to show up too. So love that. Love that. Any other practical tips for moving up in leadership, in how we go? You had mentioned at the beginning of the episode, kind of getting out of that. If you're a manager, you've got that positional level leadership where it's just because that's what it says under your name on the name tag of I am a manager. So how then do we start to get to that permission level? What do we need to do with, whether it's relationships with our team members, kind of what we do or don't do in order to get there?
One of the easiest, just because it's easy to do means it's easy to not do. So simple, just keep that in mind. But one of the things you can start with is, especially if you're a new manager, is schedule one-on-ones with your people. Understand why they're in that business. What are their career goals? What are their goals within your business? And how can you help to kind of start laying some seeds and lay a foundation on how to get them there? It might not be an overnight situation, but maybe there's a 6-month plan that you can start putting in. The biggest thing about moving from position to permission is honestly caring about where your people want to go and seeing where they need help to reach their goals. And you'll know pretty quickly in those one-on-ones whether people are also looking for that type of growth and that type of pouring into themselves, that investment, or whether they're just there for a paycheck. And you know what? People got to make their money. So more power to them if they are. But
Right.
you'll know the people who are ready for that extra input. And some common obstacles that I hear a lot from people who are like, I get that, but I have such a limited schedule, or I need to focus on doing all of these tasks. I don't necessarily have time to focus on the people. And I get that. I would also encourage you to ask about whether you want to do those tasks forever, or if you want to grow your team to be able to carry that workload that it takes to run the business.
Sure.
So when you'll know when you started shifting, when you started leveling up from position to permission, when those team members are coming to you with it for advice.
Yeah.
They want your input. maybe they're giving you honest feedback. They're not scared of a title. They see
Right.
you as a person who's invested in their growth too. And they're probably going to be talking to you more frequently also.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it just boils down to this trust, right? Like, have they seen that you've shown up for them, and you're doing it consistently, which is a sign of it being genuine, right? And you may get the kind of surface level answers at first, but especially like a new hire, they're not gonna. You may be at that permission level with everybody else on your team, but this new person is still going to start off in that positional dynamic with you because they're going to be terrified to let you think that they don't know the answer to something. And so everything's going to be kind of guarded and all of that. And so it takes a little bit of time to progress into it and showing up for them and kind of laying it out there that you do genuinely care and how do you get there and all of that. So I love it. I got to tell you, I am so excited for 360 coming up here in a few weeks, where we get to dive into this stuff and more of, just that 2.5 day entrepreneurial boot camp with a, special seasoning of culture. Let's go. So, anything else before we move into, because I got to hit you up for your favorite book and audiobook and what's going through your brain these days, to be able to share with the listeners. Anything else that we want to touch on that we haven't yet?
I think we've hit the listeners with a lot today.
Done.
I would just encourage you, if you're looking to step up from a manager to a leader, just start with one thing. Pick one
Yeah.
thing, maybe reach out to that one person and start the process.
I dig it. Okay, so favorite quote that is rocking in your world right now?
Oh, I don't know where this one came from originally, but it's one that I use all the time, which is ready is not a feeling, it's a choice.
Mm.
And I love that because so many times we might not feel ready to delegate or ready to start the business or ready to step on stage. But you have to make a choice to be ready. And then you go and you
Yeah.
grow. That's the one that I use a lot recently these
Okay,
days.
that's going up on my whiteboard. I love that. What else? Any podcasts that are rocking your world right now?
Yeah. So a podcast that I found more recently is called The Knowledge Project, and it's with a guy named Shane Parrish. So he's a Canadian, and he talks just with a lot of different, like one of the ones I recently listened to was Bill Belichick and his perspective on leadership from a pro football and just a football coach in general's perspective, which is really fascinating. But he has lots of different types of guests on there. And he really digs into the weeds. And so I've really been loving that one right now for sure. The Knowledge Project.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna shoot the moon, and we're gonna go for the circuit. What's a good book that people should read, or something that you've always kind of enjoyed, or a new discovery maybe?
So one that I kind of, like you said, you do Radical Candor kind of once a year. I do Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, typically once a year. That's the book that truly, kind of like Radical Candor, opened my eyes to my communication style.
Mm-hmm.
Daring Greatly really opened me up to elevating my level of authenticity and openness in my past leadership roles, which, turned out how it turned out. But Daring Greatly was really a really empowering book. Just about digging in a little bit and remembering that we're all human. Like we might be a B to B or a B to C, but we're all H to H, human to human.
That's right. I got to tell you too, the first time I really came across Brene, my wife had started reading, I forget which one of her books. She's got like all of them, but she had me sit down, and it was during COVID, and we watched that Netflix special that she did, and holy cow, so good.
Oh, good.
So just across the board of like, ooh, here's how I can show up, for myself and for the people that I care about in personal and professional settings. Like it's so good. All right. Well, Groovy, I think that is an awesome spot for us to wrap up. And just want to thank you so much, Michelle, for giving us a little bit of a glimpse into the Matrix today. And we've got more awesome content coming your guys' way. So be sure to check out wherever you get your podcast from for the weekly episodes. And if you liked what you heard today, which I can't imagine you wouldn't, please give us that 5-star review, and feel free to subscribe as well. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on social media, and we will get that into the queue as well. Really looking, for this to be something that continues to serve all of you. So, and as always, big shout out to Mikey Mike on the ones and twos working the Ultranet for us. Appreciate you, good sir. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Michelle, and we'll catch you all on the next one, Troublemakers.